Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Payton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Welcome back to The Unwritten Rule. Today is Friday, November 15th, and it's a two-man. Two-man is a big word going around social media right now, and this is our version of a two-man, just a two-man show. Payton Haverman and I back on The Unwritten Rule. No Jack today. He's traveling up to Indiana. He's going to cover a Purdue-Alabama game, so good luck to him. Safe travels to him. He's going to see our good friend Jack Sobel, who's on the Notre Dame beat, former Mizzou football beat writer. And speaking of Mizzou football, coming in at 23 in the current rankings, the college football rankings. We'll get to that in quick hits. But the Tigers are traveling to South Carolina for the Mayor's Cup, looking for their sixth Mayor's Cup in a row. Payton, I'll get like maybe a short, statement from you about where you think this game is going. I feel like going into this one, though, for me, you can feel a little bit optimistic. Maybe something good happens, but I think you're a little bit comfortable if the Tigers don't really pull this one out, just kind of given the circumstances around this program.
Yeah, it's been 5 straight in the Mayor's Cup series for Mizzou. I don't think they're getting to 6, quite frankly. This South Carolina team is red hot. And you can make the argument they were red hot going into that infamous 2022 matchup, but I would counter with that one you could kind of feel like was going to turn Missouri's direction. Like South Carolina was coming off a super emotional, galvanizing win over Texas A&M. Missouri had been playing very unlucky football to that point. It felt like a trap game, and that's what it was for South Carolina. Another thing about that 2022 game that separates it from this one, I think, is South Carolina is so much better this year than they were that year. I know that team went like 9-3, played Notre Dame in the ReliaQuest Bowl or one of the upper tier SEC bowls. But it's nothing compared to this South Carolina team. You're either going to have a hobbled Brady Cook or Drew Pine, who, yes, I know Drew Pine played very well, but they're going against a defense that, quite frankly, might be the strongest they've played yet this year. I mean, there are just straight up aliens all over this defense. I asked Jacob Infante, a good friend of the show, how many NFL guys are on this defense. I mean, he pointed out he thinks guys like TJ Sanders on the D-line, Kyle Kennard, who's having an unbelievable season, Nick Emanwari, I believe, the big safety who's just an athletic freak. And all those guys are potential draft picks, but their best player might not even be a draft pick this year. Dylan Stewart, I believe just a straight up true freshman, the 5-star recruit, has just been a game breaker this year. Unreal bend. He's going to give Mizzou's O-line hell. It's a huge test for Mizzou and one I don't ultimately think they'll pass. But like you said, not the end of the world if they lose this one.
And Payton, I kind of want to jump back to the offensive side of the ball before we get a little bit more into that defense. And for some Mizzou fans, SEC fans that are watching, following this game, there's going to be a very familiar face, a familiar name in that backfield for South Carolina, and that's Raheem Sanders, Rocket Sanders, who played at Arkansas with South Carolina now. I mean, what can Mizzou just kind of expect from him from what you've seen over the last couple of years? 81.2 PFF offensive grade this year, their second highest offensive player behind their punter. So you tell me a little bit about what you've seen from him. So I guess he is the top offensive performer according to PFF.
Yeah, I got to keep an eye on those snap counts, Kenny. They're key. But no, Raheem Sanders has had a huge bounce back year for them. He's averaging 5.3 yards a carry. I don't know if it just was. I do remember him being kind of hurt at various points throughout the year with Arkansas last year, but he was a mess last year. But yeah, it's a South Carolina offense that really kind of can run the ball all over you if you're not careful. I mean, Raheem Sanders already has about 700 yards this year, which 10 touchdowns as well. Lenore Sellers has 400. Sellers has really started to turn a corner just as a football player as the year has gone on. I mean, he's looked a lot better. But Sanders, like you mentioned, he's someone Mizzou's familiar with. They know how he runs. They know what to expect from him. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy to stop him by any stretch of the imagination, though.
I'm talking about Lenore Sellers too. Different guy, different looking quarterback. He wears the goggles. He's unorthodox from others, but he still has had a pretty good year. If they probably doesn't go down that LSU game, they sneak out with a win there. Had a close loss at Alabama. So this team has had close losses on their resume. But I think coming into the year as well with Lenore Sellers, we had him. I don't think we gave him really props for being that strong of a quarterback. A class of 2023 guy, but he's really stepped into that role. What does the Mizzou defense have to do to stop him?
They kind of gotta. They've played a lot of mobile QBs this year. Thomas Castellanos was a big one who we're actually going to talk about later. CJ Ogbonna from Buffalo. They've played up various just mobile QBs, but this is like a different ball game. Because Lenore Sellers is also really turning the corner as a passer. In his last 3 weeks, he was very turnover prone earlier in the year. He had 4 touchdowns, 4 picks up until that Oklahoma game where South Carolina just demolished the Sooners. Since that Oklahoma game, in his last 3 games, he's thrown 5 touchdowns, no picks. And he's completed 66% or more of his passes in 2 of those games. So he's a true dual threat. He's dangerous with his legs too. In that A&M game, he actually only completed 48% of his passes, but he still managed to have 244 yards through the air, 106 on the ground, 3 total touchdowns. He's dangerous. They're going to have to try and keep him in the pocket. I don't expect them to play him like they did Castellanos, where they just dare him to throw. I think you're going to have to kind of bring the blitz a bit. I think you're going to have to try and heat him up. They did a good job of it against Arnold last week. It's a Mizzou defense that has kind of been up and down pass rush wise because they've just had so many injuries to that room. It's kind of hard to find the depth at times. But they'll have their hands full with Sellers on Saturday, no doubt.
Looking at some of these pass catchers just quickly, Nick Harbor is a sophomore, Mizzou Bennett Jr., who's a freshman. So 2 young guys right there. And then Gage Levarden, who's a transfer, and he's a senior now. So those are the 3 primary offensive pass catchers at the wide receiver position. Interesting, too, that they do run 2 tight ends. So they have Joshua Simon and Brady Hunt, who are both, on the older side of their college careers. Joshua Simon's actually in his 6th year. Both are transfers. Both started at different positions and are now tight ends. So very tenured guys, experienced guys at those tight end positions. Moving back to the defense, though, Payton, this defensive line is just stacked. I think even mentioning guys like Dylan Stewart, but you look back, at some of these guys that are behind him, Alex Huntley, who's one of the backup, listed as a backup nose tackle, defensive tackle, behind guys like TJ Sanders, Tonka Hemingway. And then you have, looking at the offensive line that's banged up for Mizzou. What can you kind of just expect from Drake Heismeyer stepping in for Connor Tolson, who's out the rest of the season with a knee injury?
Yeah, Tollinson's out for the rest of the year, so you're going to have, and Caden Green is a bit banged up as well, I believe. He had to leave the Oklahoma game a bit early. Mitchell Walters has been good in his absence, but still, it's not ideal that you're maybe missing 2 starters on the O-line, especially against a D-line like this, because quite frankly, in the 5 years that I've really been a Mizzou football fan, this is potentially the most imposing D-line I have ever seen. Like I said, straight up athletes galore across the D-line, but they can play too. Dylan Stewart, out of 907 edge rushers in college football, he is the 42nd ranked one. He's a true freshman. That is absurd. He is going to be a top 10 draft pick probably when it's all said and done. He's that good. TJ Sanders on the middle of that D-line. He's the 28th ranked D-lineman in college football out of 940. Kyle Kennard, he's had an unbelievable season. It is just, quite frankly, I said this to you and Knowlton when I was just looking at it. I don't think Missouri can afford to throw the football more than like 15 to 20 times in this game. I just don't think they're going to have any success because even looking past that D line, you get into guys at the corner position like O'Donnell Fortune, who is the 22nd ranked CB in college football at 854. I believe he also has 4 interceptions. Someone on that it's Emanawari. He has 4 interceptions, and 2 of them have been pick sixes. Jalen Kilgore, their DB, has 3 interceptions. O'Donnell Fortune has 3. This is just a sick defense. I mean, there's no other way around it. Kyle Kennard is averaging over a sack a game. Dylan Stewart has 5.5 as a true freshman. Tonka Hemingway, who you mentioned, he's the worst graded on that D line, and he's 258th out of 940. I mean, that's perfectly fine as your second D tackle. And he has 4 sacks as well. I mean, just a ridiculous D line, a ridiculous defense in general. I don't think Missouri can afford to even try and air the ball out in this one. The way you're going to have to get at them is probably just make it an ugly mess of a game where you try and just pound the rock, and force South Carolina to try and stop it. As good as South Carolina is on the pass rush, they're not as good run defense wise. I mean, you can kind of see Dylan Stewart off the edge is just he's a middling run defender. TJ Sanders is great there, but I mean, nobody really is like superb against the run. So I think that's probably the game plan for Missouri. It's not going to look pretty, but a Missouri win is possible. It's just going to have to look ugly.
And I think, too, with that run game as well, you've seen an uptick in carries, especially for Jamal Roberts in recent stretches, even with 2 tenured veteran running backs that came over in the transfer portal in Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel, who are both listed, as healthy going into this week, even with like Nate Noel being banged up in recent stretches. I think a positive thing that I heard from Drinkwitz in that press conference, even with Nate Noel, fumbling that ball late into that game against Oklahoma, he gave Nate Noel props for not letting it affect him, went back out there and did his job.
Well, it's Jamal Roberts.
Jamal Roberts, excuse me. Yeah. Jamal Roberts, fumbling that football, younger into his career, class of 2023 kid, really stepping up in this role as a pass protector, but also seeing an uptick in carries because he is going to be one of the primary options next season. So still a good thing to look forward for him. And one of the biggest things too, if you get the run game going, you're going to open the passing game. You're going to change what the defense is going to give you looks, maybe send some more guys. You're opening up options in the passing game. Payton, too, talking about that, looking, Brady Cook is probably going to be unavailable for this game just based on where the SEC availability report is right now. Looking at it, 2 guys are doubtful, and that's Mookie Cooper, who's going to miss a 3rd consecutive game. It looks like listed as doubtful. According to the Wednesday availability report, Brady Cook doubtful as well. And then Brayshawn Littlejohn, who's a special teamer, first-year linebacker, who's listed as questionable after missing last week. With that, what can you kind of expect from Drew Pine? It was a very strong second half from him last week, but he's going up against another strong defense, a stronger defense in that regard, not cutting, not being disrespectful to what Oklahoma has, because it is still a very talented defense, but South Carolina is definitely a step ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good defense Oklahoma has. So it was encouraging to see Missouri kind of break through and get a good amount of offense out of that game. They had 3 touchdowns, right? Yeah, 3 passing touchdowns for Drew Pine. That was encouraging. But like you said, this South Carolina defense, I don't know how many units just in the SEC are better, period. It is that good of a defense that has, quite frankly, saved Shane Beamer's job because, obviously you had Napier and Pittman coming into the year as the hottest names to maybe be gone at the end of the year. Beamer was probably in that next kind of tier, but all 3 are probably off the hook now. But this defense is just like the pass rush in particular. Oklahoma was very disruptive with their D-line. They are one of the best in the nation at getting tackles for loss and everything. But this South Carolina, Kyle Kennard is having as good a year as anyone else defensively in college football. Dylan Stewart as a true freshman has really opened my eyes. It's just a ridiculous group. And Mizzou's line has been up and down this year. Marcus Bryant in particular, I think, is going to be kind of a key player to watch because he's struggled at times this season. And I mean, you've got a guy with ridiculous bend in Dylan Stewart going up against him, or Kyle Kennard, who is just as productive as a edge rusher can get. So big test for him. I'm confident in Armand Membu. He's been good this year. I think he's still Missouri's top graded offensive player. But that's going to be the key. I think Marcus Bryant versus whatever edge rusher is lined up against him. I think that's going to really go a long way in determining this game, because Drew Pine, like you said, he played well last week. He can only do so much if his own line is not holding up. I'm not too worried about him personally when he drops back. He's just got to be smart with the football, which he was pretty much every single throw last week. But yeah, I if it's not Brady Cook, which it doesn't look like it will be, I think Drew Pine will make decent enough decisions to not kill them. I think it just comes down to whether he'll have the time when they do drop back to really have any chance.
Payton, I didn't get to talk with you about this after the Oklahoma game on the show, but I think we need to talk about special teams real quick, especially going up against Shane Beamer, who plays Beamer ball. His family's known for what they've been able to accomplish on special teams. Even like my mind kind of goes back to this. I think it was 2010, the Chargers, and this has no connection to Beamer, but just thinking about it, had one of the best offenses, best defenses, worst special teams units. And it feels like, we've beaten this to death, that there's been issues on special teams the past couple seasons under Eric Link, just kind of small, hiccups here and there, just in recoveries, returns, giving up fakes. I mean, where does this kind of go, kind of moving forward at the special teams unit? I feel like after the Oklahoma game, there probably would have been a bigger discussion, even after that Auburn game with a touchdown being scored on special teams. What are just your overall thoughts in a tame and kind of calm way?
Yeah. That 2010 Chargers team, I mean, you said it. I mean, that's like there's a famous SB Nation video about them. And I think it is 2010s. It's one of those Phillip Rivers Chargers teams that had one of the best offenses and best defenses, really one of the better teams in NFL history when you look at it all. But they had one of the worst special teams years ever and didn't even make the playoffs. Look, Missouri is lucky special teams hasn't cost them a game yet this year. I mean, it's not even, you said small hiccups. You can take the word small out of it. This unit is just flat out terrible this year. Their kicker's not making kicks. Luke Bauer's been good. I think that's been a welcome surprise. But again, I don't give any credit to the coaching staff for that because they tried to replace him. He's not even on scholarship. So, not great look. Not a great look there. And I mean, like you said, last week it was like that penalty from that inexplicable late hit. I mean, he flew in as the guy was on the ground. It was just a stupid penalty that gifted Oklahoma 3 points, essentially. They commit penalties like crazy. Just inexplicable fair catches. I don't know why Daniel Blood keeps fair catching the ball at the 5-yard line. They got to stop doing that. Just take your chance and let it bounce. If you lose 4 yards off it because he executed the perfect punt, take the chance. There's nothing to gain from stuff like that. I hate when Marquise Johnson was back there, he'd run way too many kickoffs out for my liking. It's just a poorly managed unit that very rarely makes any positive plays. Can you name a positive play that any special teams unit has made this year besides, I guess, Blake Craig making a couple long field goals?
Yeah, it is a tough one to think about because you kind of go back to last year where,
I guess Bowen muffed a punt for Oklahoma and Jamarian Wayne got it. And then Jamarian Wade also had a kick-catch interference. Kick-catch interference is unbelievable. That is the easiest penalty to avoid ever. Don't run into the guy that you're staring at the whole way down the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a frustrating unit. We've seen Eric Link kind of change positions too. Was in a higher assistant role. Coach tight ends it well at some point, but that's now Durham Cato's overarching position as a tight ends coach. So just as a special teams coordinator now, he's been with Drinkwitz for a long time, even going back to their App State days. Looking at this, just final records, just looking at the South Carolina game, like we mentioned, 5 straight years with a win in the Mayor's Cup. Before that, 3 straight losses, and then 2 straight. They swapped to the first 4, so it split it 2-2.
There's a game below that too.
Yeah, but even before this was before the SEC. So back in 2005,
okay.
Playing in Shreveport, which I believe was a bowl game, and then another bowl game back in 1979. So the 2 games not part of that Mayor's Cup rivalry initially. So that puts the Tigers at 7-5.
9-5.
In the Mayor's. Say 9-5 with those 2 other games.
In the Mayor's
7-5
Cup.
In the Mayor's Cup rivalry. So the Tigers looking for that 8th one. We'll get our final predictions. We'll ask Jack a little bit later about what his is as he's traveling right now. But do you have your prediction, Payton?
I think I do. I just don't see a way. Like, Drinkwitz has historically owned South Carolina. Even at App State, he was able to knock off South Carolina. There's been some fun games in the series. 2019 was a fun one. 2022, I still think I'd put that South Carolina win up as one of Drinkwitz's more impressive ones. That said, this South Carolina team is just a little too good right now. They're playing too good they're just too hot for me to see Mizzou kind of coming away with a win here. It's in Columbia, fake Columbia. So there's that too. I unfortunately believe that the Gamecocks will be taking back the Mayor's Cup by a score of 31-17. I think Missouri will get 1 late touchdown. That's kind of garbage time, but I think South Carolina will kind of jet away in the second half. I don't think this is a game Missouri wins. Again, not a game I'm upset that if they lose. South Carolina is really good. I just am hoping for Mizzou to climb their way to 9 wins at this point, but I think the Gamecocks will finally get back in the win column in this series.
Yeah, we're definitely a little bit more tame than usual. Predicting 3 straight losses here on the board, on our predictions board.
Who won last week? I think you did.
Yeah, do we do that? Because we all predicted a loss.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
I was the closest one, though.
I'll
take my points. This South Carolina game, though, I did have a number in the 30s in my head, 34, kept jumping around. I've been so off these last couple weeks, even with the win, even taking my win last week.
I haven't gotten a win since the Vandy game, man.
So I'm feeling that, I'll be a little bit more optimistic with this score being a little bit closer, just to shake it up a little bit. Because I think I did tell you that Oklahoma game, this could be one where just completely just shocks us. Drew Pine ends up playing really well. He had time to knock off the rust, get back into a starting role. I'm thinking 27 for South Carolina. So I'll go 27-17. I think that's a fair one, kind of do. Maybe a field goal, late touchdown, like you said, sneaks in there to keep it within 10 and covers what the current spread is right now. Mizzou or South Carolina is favored by 13.5.
Yeah, on ESPN bet. So there's that.
Well, that's going to do it for our preview of the South Carolina Mizzou game. South Carolina entering at 21 in the college football playoff rankings. Mizzou at 23. South Carolina does have those 3 losses. In the SEC, some tight ones there to Alabama and LSU. This game Saturday, 3:15 on the SEC network. You can watch it there. We'll have your recap on Monday. On the other side, though, we'll talk about some basketball. Tigers getting some wins recently, and then we'll end the show with quick hits. All right, basketball time. Before we move on to quick hits here, recording late after the Mississippi Valley State game. But let's start off, though, with some just quick thoughts from the Eastern Washington game earlier in the week. A lot of people have had their chance to kind of settle in, look back on how this game kind of played out. And, of course, it was the Caleb Grill game. I think that's an easy way to say it. He had a very bounce-back game, a strong performance after some rusty games early on to start the year. It was just what he needed. And Payton, I think, you're the first person we want to go to because you had some opinions about where Caleb Grill was at the beginning of this year, and I did as well, but I think yours were a little bit stronger than mine. And I think just a good place to start is what did you kind of see from Caleb Grill in this win?
I saw him become a confident player, quite frankly. I mean, look, you can put this on me if you want. I'm hardly alone. You just have to take one look at Twitter and know where everyone was at with Caleb Grill. It was frustrating these first few games and a lot of last year because the idea of Caleb Grill is really great. This supposed sharpshooter that can kind of hound you on the boards for a guard. And be like, a lot of people praise his defense, especially from his time at a defensive juggernaut like Iowa State. But we hadn't seen it at Missouri, and the first 2 games were just paltry. And I mean, Dennis finally had enough in the game against Howard and didn't play him down the stretch. But boy, he needed that game. It really was a case of sometimes you just need to see one go in. That was absolutely the case for Caleb Grill. 8 for 10 from deep, 10 for 13, 33 points. Like, it was the player that we were promised. And quite frankly, Mizzou needed all of it because, again, up until that point, Missouri just had not put together a complete game. They fell behind early against Eastern Washington, who, by the way, Eastern Washington has some legit players in that starting lineup. They're not deep, but Andrew Cook and Mason Williams, those are 2 guys that might be poached by some upper tier programs. Those are hoopers. But Mizzou comes back. They take a big lead, but again, they just let Eastern Washington hang around. They nail some threes. Outside of it, like, you look at the team numbers, it was 10 for 18 from deep for Mizzou, which was a great bounce back from 3 for 22 from Howard, but 8 of 10 of those were from Caleb Grill. They needed every bit of that to close out Eastern Washington down the stretch. Again, they flirted with disaster. They didn't cross the threshold. So that's a big difference. Last year, it felt like Mizzou would just wait for things to go south on them, and then they'd fold like a lawn chair. They've had times where that's happened in this non-con as well. It happened against Memphis, and they didn't recover because Memphis is talented. Bit too much lineup tinkering, I'd say. But Eastern Washington and Howard, yes, those are programs you should beat 24/7, 365, and twice on Sunday, the whole 9 yards. But they didn't fold, and that is a big step up. Last year, they lost to Jackson State. They haven't had their Jackson State moment.
And that's 33 points off the bench, too. Caleb Grill did play the most minutes in this game. He did start the first 2 games of the season against Memphis and Howard, moves to the bench. Anar Boateng, the freshman, takes over his spot in the starting 5, and he still had 33 points in 32 minutes, the most in that game, plus minus of 11. Just going across there as well with 9 rebounds. I think, coming into the season, even coming into this game, I don't think you would have expected 33 points probably across the next 4 games total. It felt like just kind of where Caleb's trajectory was going. And he talked about it post game as well. There was, coming back from that wrist injury, shot felt weird, and he just had to play through it. And that was one of the biggest things he mentioned in that post game. He's talking about Dennis Gates told him to just keep going through it. It was kind of knocking off the rust, for a guy that's been around college basketball at 3 different programs in his final year because he got that medical red shirt. You kind of wanted him to bounce back a little bit faster, and he did. I mean, got into that third game, kind of switched his role and really stepped up. I don't think any of us would have expected 33 points from Caleb Grill in one game, and even across probably 5 total. Another thing that just really stood out to me, just kind of from this box score as well, looking at it here, Anthony Robinson, who did come off the bench in this game, had 8 points, all from the free throw line, and we'll get into it with Mississippi Valley State here in a second. But Anthony Robinson, like through a couple games this season, looks like a totally different player, and it's not just from the aspect of watching him. He looks more mature. We mentioned it with the Josh Gray when Josh Gray got frustrated in a play early in one of the early games, and Anthony Robinson kind of calmed him down, got him settled. And he's a sophomore. I mean, he's a 19 to 20-year-old range. And he's doing that, but he also just looks physically stronger while he's out there. It looks like he added like an inch almost. So, these kids are always growing into their frames, and it's just all across the board. It seems like we're seeing a different Ant than last year.
Yeah, certainly a different player physically and, like you said, confidence-wise. You look at this Eastern Washington game, you see 0 for 3 from the field, and you're like, well, but I mean, goodness gracious, he plays borderline out of control at times. He plays so fast, it's just frantic. Like teams just have to foul him at certain points. He had 10 shots from the line and made 8 of them. You'll take that every day of the week from your sophomore point guard. And the defense, it was a little rougher in the second half, I think. That is going to be an issue as he's still growing. I mean, he's still a true sophomore. The fouls are going to be an issue. He's still going to have growing pains. It's not going to be a finished product this year, I'm sure. But the defense, you can just see it. We saw flashes of it last year. I mean, he is just, you can tell guys get frustrated when he's on them. Nick McLean, who was a starting guard for Eastern Washington, I mean, he like pushed Ant off of him after like one sequence. I mean, he was Ant face guards you. He kind of gets in your face. He's physical, 100%. He's not afraid to get in there and get a little dirty. McLean had 2 fouls on him within like the first 10 minutes. And Dan Monson, Eastern Washington's head coach, still had to send him out there because, again, Eastern Washington ain't a deep team. But, yeah, I've liked a lot of what I've seen from Ant this season. Offensive games you still want to see him make more shots from the field. There's going to be growing pains, but, boy, you got to be looking for, if you're Dennis Gates and company, you got to be real excited about his progress so far this year and really looking forward to what he could be in year 3 or 4.
It takes me back to what even you and Jack mentioned early on last season when the team, there was probably higher expectations for where that Mizzou team was going last year. But a lot of people took notice of what Anthony Robinson was kind of accomplishing, where he was kind of taking strides, albeit it probably wasn't the best freshman year that he wanted to see in that 2023-2024 season, but still came out with some, progressions that a lot of people probably weren't expecting. We think we mentioned it before. He wasn't the highest rated recruit. He was still a good recruit in his class for Dennis Gates. He wasn't the highest rated one. I think something too you just want to see is that there were parts in Aiden Shaw's development where everyone was saying, oh, he's still a sophomore, he's still a freshman. You just don't want it to stall, and I think that's one of the biggest things that you've probably seen in years past. And Aiden Shaw has definitely taken some steps forward this year, and you want to continue to see that. But with Anthony Robinson as well, with a guy who's a little bit smaller guard in his first year, and now he's maturity is like higher and he's just physically looks better out there. You want to see that step forward though this season. You want to see a bigger step, and I think we're seeing it early on.
No, definitely. And I think that's a good point to make about Aiden Shaw is Aiden Shaw has definitely taken a step up this year. I think everyone can see that. He's definitely more confident offensively. You can tell it's still not perfect. There's still going to be hiccups. When we get to SEC play, he'll turn the ball over sometimes. But he's more confident he'll dribble around. He'll take shots at the rim. He's taking open jumpers and making them. Definitely a different player, like you mentioned there. But in year 2, like you said, his development totally plateaued. And that was a big problem for both him and Mizzou, to the point where we thought he might transfer. And Ant's not going through that. And I think that's a big, big plus. I think that's a big win, positive sign of optimism. If you're a Mizzou fan, that maybe the developing staff isn't a total mess right now, because you're seeing Ant take a step forward. Trent Pierce, I think, has taken a nice step this season, not a big one, but a good one. And I mean, Aiden Shaw, like you mentioned, taking a step forward. The numbers don't light up the stat sheet in the Eastern Washington game. 1 for 3 from the field, only a board. But he is just there's always been flashes of that just crazy ceiling defensively in particular because of his athleticism. This year, man, he is just really, I think, turning it up defensively. I mean, in here, you see he's the highest plus minus on the team, plus 12. He was the best player on the floor for them by that metric. There weren't very many negatives. There were only 4 of them, but that's a big plus. I mean, Caleb Grill was only a plus 11 in this one.
And it's no knock on, Dennis either. I don't think it's even like a thing of learning about development. This guy coached at Florida State. He was on one of the most highly regarded staffs. He's been around college basketball. He's seen big talent come in. We can't just compare it to what he did at Cleveland State. He's seen premier talent, and he has premier talent in these past few recruiting classes. So he's definitely seen this before. He just needs to keep taking those steps forward with this team. So yeah, Mizzou picked up their second win. This was earlier on Monday, 84-74 or 77, over Eastern Washington. Let's pivot to some some more fun action. I think
This
was a
bloodbath.
This was fun to watch. This is one of those blood donor games. This is a game where some people probably feel bad for Mississippi Valley State. It is, it's tough, but it's tough on those players. It's tough on that staff. But, the school still takes, some positives away from this for going to this game. But Missouri men's basketball, pulling away with 111-39 win. This score, the difference in the score matched the program high of a score differential in
72.
Missouri. 72 points for Missouri men's basketball. It's been done twice and not in this century. So Missouri Tigers just missed it by 1 point. But Payton, just initial thoughts just from this kind of bloodbath, like you said.
Yeah, very, 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 very positive sign. That was a thing that was a legitimate complaint. Dennis Gates and company have not been closing these games out. They're not blowing teams out that they probably should be blowing out. And he took that, and it was literally, I think, a quote he had in the post game. He said, "I think we played 2 complete halves of basketball tonight after this one." 111-39. I know it's Mississippi Valley State. I don't think bad teams win by 72 points on accident. I really don't. I do think it tells you at least a little bit. Interesting thing to note right away here, Tony Perkins, who, of course, was dealing with that injury preseason. He wound up playing the first 3 games, but really, really struggled. He was not good in those games, including Eastern Washington. He did not start. He did not play. He was out with injury. Trent Pierce got the start, I believe, right?
Trent Pierce was the first off the bench.
He was the first guy off the bench. Sorry. But okay, so it was Ant, Tamar, Boateng, Mitchell, and Gray. So pretty much it was the Memphis lineup essentially. So that there is that to consider. Again, this is another thing where you can just tell Dennis is tinkering right now. Aiden Shaw, after playing a pretty solid game, he was the highest plus minus on the team against Eastern Washington, did not get in until there was less than 10 minutes left in this one. But boy, oh boy, I mean, you have to look at this game. Could you possibly be upset with anything? They shot 15 for 31 from deep, which, yes, Mississippi Valley State does not have the athletes to really contest shots the same. The 3-point line doesn't move back and forth between SEC play. You still got to knock those down, and that was a very big, good thing. Caleb Grill made 2 of his 4 attempts. It was another good game for him. 15 points, had a couple boards. That's what you want to see from him. Mark Mitchell making 2 of 4 is big. And one of those was a straight catch and shoot from the corner. If Mark Mitchell can go into SEC play and just make 1 or 2 every so often in a game and grab the boards like he's been doing in these first few games, that makes a big difference. Again, Missouri won this game on the boards. That is something I will grant does not mean much to me because Mississippi Valley State was horribly undersized. But everything you could have wanted in this game, you had to have gotten. I mean, 66 bench points when you're tinkering as much as Dennis Gates is, you might as well get that many. 44 points in the paint, 45 points off turnovers. Mississippi Valley State had 39 total. Held Mississippi Valley State to what, 27% from the field. They made 1 3-pointer all night. It was a perfect game. And I mean, I'll let you kind of touch on some other guys. There were other great performers in this one. Marquez Warwick had a great game. Definitely they need more of that from him. Cruz made a few 3-pointers, but last guy I'll mention, and then I'll toss it over to you. Marcus Allen is a guy that I said coming into the year, I think he'll play in stretches where Mizzou needs big defensive stops down the stretch of a game. But he has done more than that. Dennis Gates, I think, legitimately is going to let him be a part of this rotation. And he deserves to be in it. I mean, again, true freshman. It's not going to be perfect all the way. I don't think he has much of a shot from deep. I don't think he has much of an offensive game from anywhere outside of around the rim. But I believe Gabe Yarman made a good point. He very clearly has good touch around the rim. He made 3 shots today that were all point blank. Made all 4 of his free throws. Has shown a good capability to board. Had a couple of assists too. Like, he's flashing some real encouraging signs early on, and I'd like to see him continue to be a part of the rotation. I don't know who you cut. Probably whichever, like Warwick, Cruz, or maybe Perkins don't have it going on a particular night. Maybe you cut Josh Gray's minutes bit, even though I don't think he was bad at all in this game. Very encouraging signs for Marcus Allen early on.
I like the physicality from a lot of the younger guys too. I think all around, even playing like a lower level school, a mid-major school like Mississippi Valley State, you saw a lot of sticky defense. A lot of guys were just tucked on their matches. I thought there was just a lot of strong defense in that regard. And as you saw some good plays from Anthony Robinson, especially there in the second half, holding his own, like going underneath the rim and getting the ball to the net. I mean, to the rim, he was scoring, he was drawing fouls. It was just a strong kind of performance there when he didn't really score much. I don't think he scored at all in the first half. He picked up all those 5 points there in the second. So it was good to see him back in that starting role with Perkins out, dealing with that leg injury. And Dennis even mentioned, that he could have played today, but they weren't going to, push anything, especially for this game, especially just for one game. So it doesn't seem like too big of a deal. For Marcus Warwick, though, this is exactly what you wanted to see. And he's a guy that is the leading NCAA scorer right now, the active one. 6 for 10, 4 from 5 is just what you wanted to see early on in the season. And you can come into these games, you can even say it after, oh, you didn't really learn much. I think you learned a lot. I think you always do.
I agree.
You can see this across maybe even different sports, and it's not always good to match those. And especially when it's a game like this, when you're playing lower level competition, and it's fair to say that just when you see who's on this SEC team. But you learned a lot. I mean, you're seeing guys making these strides that they need to do early on, because you don't want to rework, or you want to rework what you had last season. You don't want to match that loss total. Jacob Cruz shooting 3 from 8 from 3. He was a guy that was known for threes at UT Martin. He could crank it, and that's exactly how it was. And maybe he's a guy that just needs a breakthrough again. It's it's not different, from whatever conference you're in coming up to the SEC. It's all the same from 3-point line. Maybe defense gets a little bit different, but you're not into SEC play. So it's just something probably needs to work through. But it was good to see those 11 points, and even texting back and forth on our basketball group chats. Payton be like, oh, take Jacob Cruz out, then he hits a 3. I mean, it was just something like that where he's just going to make make a good attempt, and we're all in high spirits. We're giving props where they need to be given, but this team's going to lose games, and we're going to see things from Jacob Cruz. We're going to see things from Caleb Grill again that we're going to be pretty frustrated with. But this was a good step forward, I think, on multiple regards for this team, and a lot of guys took a step forward in physicality, shooting, and overall just a really good win for the Tigers. I mean, 111 points. It's the first time they scored 100 points since early November of 2023.
Yeah, against UAPB. You mentioned that those young guys, they got a lot of run in this game. I mean, at one point, there was a lineup out there, and I loved it. A lineup of Payton Marshall, Honor Boateng, Marcus Allen, Trent Pierce, Ant Robinson. That fires me up, man, because those are 5 guys you want to see really lead this program for 4 years. So it's getting them out there, getting them familiar with each other's play styles, getting that cohesion is huge. I think it's why I know we always are going to complain about Dennis's tinkering with the lineup. It is important to do it in games like this. He needs to find out who will be usable. He needs to find out what lineups will work. And more importantly, I mean, everyone needs to learn how to play with each other. These are it's a bunch of guys that have never played together for the most part. So getting them all out there, getting them in cohesion, I don't really have a problem with him doing mass subbing in the last 3 games. The Memphis game is a different story. I don't think if he went back and had to do it again, I doubt he puts in Jacob Cruz and Marquez Warwick when that game starts to get out of control. But I mean, now you get those 2 in. Marquez Warwick is the leading scorer in college basketball, active leading scorer in college basketball. He finally has a nice night, 4 for 5 from deep, 6 for 10 from the field. Jacob Cruz, still up and down a bit, but 3 for 8 from deep. You'll take that, absolutely. I mean, if you can get those 2 guys going, Caleb Grill stays in rhythm. Mark Mitchell keeps giving you consistent. I mean, Mark Mitchell had 5 steals tonight. He is a defensive brick wall. I mean, he's going to win a lot. He's going to have a lot. He knows how to take advantage of matchups. I think the world of Mark Mitchell. there is a legitimate, really good team in here, I think. And I think tonight proved it. Because, again, this Mississippi Valley State team played Iowa State. And I know it's not in Iowa State's game to go out and win and score 111 points. They're a defensive juggernaut. But they won that game by 39. Missouri won by 72. I don't think you win games. And no, I'm not saying Missouri would beat Iowa State because of the transitive property. But I don't think teams that aren't talented win games by 72. Like, no matter who they're playing, unless it's an NAIA like Paul Quinn, who, when we saw that, Missouri didn't even win by close to that. So I think this is a very encouraging sign. It also helps Mizzou's resume a lot on some of those. I mean, the committee looks at like numbers, like their own versions of Ken Palm and everything. So a good way to measure it is how did Mizzou rise in the ranks after these games? Well, they shot up 10 spots in Ken Palm, which is out of this world good. And they shot up 8 spots in Torvik, another really good one. So Missouri needs to keep going out and blowing teams out like this. Just keep your foot on the gas. Keep getting these lineups in cohesion. I mean, Honor Boateng, the young guys in particular, Honor Boateng, 10 points for him. You know, he didn't make a 3, only went 4 for 6 from the charity stripe, but he's growing. He's a true freshman. So I agree with you, Kenny. I think you have to love what you saw out of the Tigers tonight. I think it's a very encouraging sign. I don't think it's nothing.
Yeah, I'm glad other people are feeling that too, because I think you sometimes run into games where you're playing these blood donors, you're playing these teams that you're paying a lot of money, and some people just say you didn't learn anything. This was a good win for the Tigers, of course, Mississippi Valley State, but you saw a lot of progress. You saw a lot of guys take a step forward and fix things that just weren't going well in those first couple of games. I have one last stat for you, Payton. This comes from Tom Orff, who works for Mizzou Athletics. You know, guy that has all the records in the world. He carries all these books. You can see him in the press box. If you see him around, he has everything. But he said Mizzou with 7 players in double figures is the first time since December 18th, 2010 in a 116-63 win over Central Arkansas. Do you want to guess those 7 players?
This was last year?
So this was 2010. Last time
2010. The
Mizzou had
7 players
in double figures. Because tonight it was Tamar Bates, Anar Boateng, Mark Mitchell, Marcus Warwick, and Marcus Allen, Caleb Grill, and Jacob Cruz.
The 7 players in 2010. So that was like a little before like the really good years, wasn't it? I mean, that's like, was Clarkson? Clarkson wasn't there.
No.
Pressey?
Yep, Phil Pressey with 15.
English.
Tim English at 14.
Barnett?
No Barnett.
One
of these guys is still around
man.
the pro. What'd you say?
There's a big man in there that did it. He was a transfer.
I played in the NBA. There's a guy in here that's probably known for being in the NBA.
Oh, there's one around the program, you said?
One is still around the program. He doesn't coach, but he's at most.
Is he the NIL guy whose name is escaping me currently?
Last name starts with a B. I'll finish it up here.
You're going to say these names and I'm going to hate myself for not getting
Bowers.
Oh, yeah, Lawrence Bowers. Yeah, of course.
Denman was the one I was trying to get.
Marcus Denman, yep.
He had 21. Ratliff had 18. Kruklo had 11. And Stafford had 11.
Wow. I can't wait for those like little stat factoids from 2019 onwards because I think I'll know all of them.
Yeah, just wait till it takes you back to that 2020 to 2021 season, the COVID year. That was probably one of those years where I'm going to remember every single player from that team, even down to Drew Buggs.
From Drew Buggs to Xavier Pinson.
Yeah, and we're going to know everything about it. Last thing I got from this game, we did get to see the walk-ons. This is one of those things earlier in the year. JV Brown got in the game. I don't think I'd ever seen JV Brown before, like without a pullover on. So that was pretty cool. Jeremy Sanchez, who we've talked to Ben Sternberg about, he played at Cleveland State with Dennis Gates and reunited with him for his final year of eligibility. He is a captain. So probably good for him to get in.
-4.
Yeah. Good for them to get in the game. There's another walk-on, right?
There is. I don't remember his name for whatever reason.
Danny Stevens. And I'm wondering, he was in a boot last year. So I don't know if it's still going on, but he didn't get in the game with the walk-ons.
Yeah. Oh, and if you needed any confirmation that T.O. Barrett is redshirting, he did not get into this game. So he is absolutely taking a red shirt. Only freshman that didn't play, unfortunately. One last thing for me, just a takeaway. One thing this team is inarguably better at, other than just being more talented in general, they get to the line a lot more. This isn't even just a takeaway from the 3 blood donors. I mean, they got to the line in that Memphis game too. The problem is, I think they're going to be hovering around the 70% mark from the line, which is going to frustrate people. But baby steps, man. Last year, they could not buy their way to the line. So that's a big positive that they're able to draw that more. Also, always gets lost in the shuffle, probably because there's so many new faces. One person I don't think anyone should have a question about is Tamar Bates. He has followed up his stellar season last year with just monstrous efforts in the first 4 games. I do not sleep on Tamar Bates. I love Tamar Bates. He's awesome. Brings a lot of energy. Definitely a good sign that he's still making his shots.
For sure. And that was what we mentioned in the preview. He's a guy that kind of flew under the radar this offseason. He had a good year last year. They brought in a lot of transfers. There's a lot of new looks around the program after losing every SEC game. And it felt like we just weren't talking about him enough. I want to throw one thing in, though, about free throws. And this is something that you probably want to see an improvement for him. That's Mark Mitchell. He missed the first free throw of the game. And I was thinking about it. Then I heard on the broadcast, like, he hasn't hit many. He's at 52 point, he was like hovering around like 60% right now. And he went 3 for 6 in this game. Probably was something you want to see him get improve on that regard. Because when you look at it, I mean, even during the Conso years, this team, that Mizzou relied on free throws. Like that was just what the identity was. Of course,
they set a record.
Yeah, they set a record. And so you want to take that and just kind of bring it back. Of course, different program, different person at the helm. This team was always known. This program was known for free throws. So it's definitely something, if you're going to get to the line more, make them. They're free.
Yeah. It is interesting as well because, I mean, like you look at like Tamar Bates is legitimately like an elite free throw shooter, but no one else on the team really is. Mitchell, like you said, really does need to make those because he's going to go to the line a lot. And he's had a few good efforts, but like the Memphis game wasn't good. He didn't make his free throws against Mississippi Valley State. Payton Marshall, I'm not expecting him to make his free throws right now. A freshman big man. Trent Pierce is a guy I'd like to see do better than 4 for 7. He's got such a nice looking shot. You'd like to see those go in. Aiden Shaw, also someone that I think is just still going to be a work in progress with that shot. He made a 3-pointer tonight. I'm not going to complain about him missing 2 free throws. So.
And the one thing I'll throw out there was 65% is what he's at now after going 3 for 6 in this game. That's Mark Mitchell. One more thing about
70, man. That's good enough.
One last thing about freshmen, though. Trent Burns was suited up, went through warm-ups. He was out with illness recently in these past couple games. He did not play, so he's still one of the freshmen that hasn't seen any action. Payton, any other just takeaways from these past 2 games before we call and move to quick hits?
No, I mean, look, there's still going to be hiccups. It's not going to be a team that maybe I even picked to go to the tournament, but there is progress clearly being made here. I do think this is a talented team. Like I said, you don't need to make the tournament for me to consider it a successful year. Go above 500, win a few conference games. Go win 5 to 7 conference games. And I think that's probably a good enough year to really kind of have me back fully in on the program.
It would just be an added bonus in Payton's eyes if they do make it. If the Tigers do make it to the NCAA tournament, maybe an NIT. I feel like Payton would definitely love.
I would be cool with the NIT this year. I really would. I think that'd be very successful for them.
Tigers next up, though, taking on the Tigers, the Pacific Tigers. That is a week from when you're listening to this, so Friday, November 22nd at 6:30. We'll talk about that more next week. It'll be in the Friday episode, so you'll get your preview then. Maybe talk about some things just earlier in the week if there's any basketball news, any updates on Tony Perkins. But no game in the early stages of the week, so you'll have to wait until next Friday. But that's going to do it for our basketball segment. We'll see you on the other side with Quick Hits. Quick hits time. Good place to start. Let's do my jersey of the week here. Jack also just sent in his score prediction for the South Carolina game. He has 27-10 South Carolina pulling off a cover there against the Missouri Tigers. Okay, my jersey of the week, though, goes to the Tigers' first commitment in the class of 2025 for women's basketball, and that's Nikki Kirsten. Our good friend Mari, who is a women's college basketball coach, said, "Congrats, Mizzou is a special place. This is a good one for the Tigers." Also got another good reply from someone that knows Nikki well. Says she knows her well. Mizzou got an incredible player and leader. Coach Nikki is a terrific fit. So good first place to go. We trust Mari with her judgment on Mizzou's first commitment.
According to an article from Kevin Utes in the Missourian as well, she has been named to the Illinois Basketball Coaches Association All-State team twice, and she was a first-teamer this past season, so pretty good. Also a fun factoid that Kevin points out here, Kirsten's older sister, Lexi, is a sophomore guard at Vermont, and the Catamounts, of course, beat Missouri earlier this season. So it's a sibling rivalry.
Yeah, hopefully they do a home and home. They can play each other in the coming years. Payton, what's your jersey?
My jersey of the week is going to go to Tristan Newsome with the hit heard round the world. Of course, that forced the Jackson Arnold fumble, leading to the Zion Young scoop and score to beat Oklahoma. He was named SEC Defensive Player of the Week this past week. He did have a very, very good game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not even sure if he was Missouri's best defensive player in that game, though. It's a bit of a pomp and circumstance award. And of course, Newsome had the biggest hit of the game, but boy, Dalen Carnell deserves some love too. That was, I thought, Dalen Carnell's best game as a Missouri Tiger.
Also, something that kind of stands out to me on these players of the week. Rocket Sanders is on there.
So is Torricelli Simpkins
and Lenore Sellers. And this was against Vanderbilt, which is not a pushover team anymore in the SEC.
Yeah, Vanderbilt's a good team this year, and South Carolina handled them pretty well. 28-7, I believe the final score was in that game.
Looking at Jack's jersey of the week, this is a fun one. I got to post this on our Twitter account. Arden Walker got a 92 overall card. Some of you might not understand how cool that is, probably for someone just in college football right now, but on the College Football 25 EA game, 92, Payton. I mean, are you excited to pick up the Arden Walker card?
Hell yeah. I mean, he had 2 sacks against Texas Tech this past week, so that was a big game. Colorado very much they control their own destiny to win the Big 12. So big deal for them. Big deal for Arden Walker. It's funny just to see this a bit. He has 3 sacks on the year total, but yeah, good for Arden Walker.
Arden Walker, who transferred from Mizzou to Colorado after the 2022 season. He actually got to talk in the press conference leading up to the Gasparilla Bowl that season, because there were some opt-outs, some injuries at the defensive end position, and he was seeing an uptick in snaps. Moving on, though. Payton, you gonna play our jingle? You gotta play our sound.
Oh, shoot. Shawnee's, I like no cap and I'm the main bird. 1 second, I'll find it. I'm not a producer.
I like no cap and he's the main bird.
There you go.
Shawnee's main bird of the week. Mine goes to Mari. She made it twice on quick hits this week. She picked up her first win with the Harper Hawks. She's in her first year as the women's basketball coach there. This was a big win. Gabrielle G. Swanson had a double-double, got the box score pulled up as well. They won 61-14.
Oh my God.
It was her first win. They beat Morton College. Very good performance. Good for her. Glad the program is in the right direction with her at the helm.
Morton didn't know what hit them. They scored 2 points in the third and fourth quarters. That is absolutely suffocating defense from Harper College. Congrats to Mari. My main bird of the week is going to be the Mizzou volleyball team. Once again, they're making their way into the show. Why are they a bird connection, you might ask? Well, as Kenny pointed out, they're battling for first in the SEC with Kentucky. Kentucky plays in the state of Kentucky. The state of Kentucky has Louisville. Louisville is where the University of Louisville is located. Louisville is the Cardinals. The Cardinals are a bird. So there you go. They're ranked number 25, Kenny. I cannot believe it took them this long to get ranked despite winning, 8 in a row. Also, they beat South Carolina, so there's another bird connection. We're keeping part of the Mayor's Cup in Columbia for that. But yeah, finally got a number next to their name. It's been an incredible year for Don Sullivan's program. Competing for an SEC title, that doesn't happen in Missouri in a long time.
Yeah, 3 straight sets against South Carolina. Good step forward for this program that deserved a ranking. They were in a good stretch there. One of the top teams in the SEC right now. Looking at Jack's main bird, that's Thomas Castellanos. Payton brought him up in our preview, talking about a mobile quarterback, but Thomas Castellanos is going to enter the transfer portal according to multiple sources, telling Rivals.com and Yahoo Sports. Payton, could you see Thomas Castellanos at Faurot Field on Saturdays next fall?
I'll be honest. I know a lot of people were saying that Missouri's going to need to go into the portal for a transfer QB. I would probably look elsewhere. I don't think Thomas Castellanos would translate well to the SEC. And, I'm not a great judger of talent. I'm just an idiot that talks on a podcast, but I was wrong about Diego Pavia transitioning to the SEC. Quite literally, he has led the greatest Vanderbilt season in years. But I think Missouri could be better served going after someone else. Castellanos has kind of been on the downswing at Boston College. He got benched in their game on Saturday. Bill O'Brien confirmed he was no longer the starter at a press conference this week, and then he left the program. I mean, it's just kind of, I would look elsewhere. I think there will be better options that Mizzou will have. Certainly don't want to discount Castellanos as an option, but I think Missouri can do better.
I agree too. I think there's a point where you look at Diego Pavia had a great performance when he was still at New Mexico State, when he played against Auburn. This one's a little bit different. Thomas Castellanos struggled at times. And the times that they did score, it was just the defense for Missouri just shooting itself in the
giving
foot.
Up huge, wide open guys. We'll say he does have 18 touchdowns to 5 picks this year through the air, completing 61% of his passes. And of course, he's a rushing threat too. But man, I just don't know. 5'9", I struggle to see his rushing production is actually really dipped off this year. He's only got 2.1 yards a carry. Maybe that's a coaching thing, but I think Missouri can look elsewhere. Moving on, Payton, what's the best thing you learned this week? Best thing I learned this week, and this is probably a very, very well-deserved award. Eli Drinkwitz was named the MAC St. Louis Sports Personality of the Year. We've talked about it to death. Drinkwitz loves to talk. He's got some zingers in there. Very well-earned award for Drink. That's what I'll say about it. Who would have been his primary opponent? Competition in Missouri. I assume this is a Missouri Sports Award. So maybe Travis Kelce. He's a loud personality, but you never know. I mean, I don't think anyone on the Cardinals would qualify for this award. Ollie Marmol. I was trying to think of somebody. No, any personality. No, not Ollie Marmol. Maybe it is just St. Louis, like St. Louis area, and you can say St. Louis colleges. Like Missouri's, I know the Billikens are there, but come on, it's Mizzou. Best thing I learned this week is that Mizzou men's basketball signed their 2 commits in the class of 2025, that being Aaron Rowe and Nicholas Randall. We talked about both of them at certain points and just what you can kind of expect from both, but the Tigers are still not done though. There's a third guy, Davion Hanna, who's going to announce his commitment on Friday. So by the time you're probably listening to this, you'll know where he's going. Alabama in the mix as well, along with Cincinnati and Ohio State, I believe, are the other in the top 4. 2 schools in Ohio, 2 schools in the SEC. Looks like he's trending towards Alabama, but we'll see what that announcement comes with on Friday. Yeah, definitely. I mean, an interesting thing, I think, or unless I almost said Dennis. No, yeah, it's in here. Dennis said, he was at AZ Compass Prep, but would have been like the Missouri basketball player of the year, I think is what he said. And
Yeah,
he
but
did
not
actually
Nicholas
win
Randle.
it. He won it, the Class 4 player of the year. So it's actually good. He's at AZ Prep. I mean, Class 4, no disrespect, is a step down from a lot of other competition. So it'll be good that he gets that experience. Just makes the transition to college a lot easier.
And that's Nicholas Randle, who transferred from LaShawn in St. Louis. And Trent Pierce played at Compass Prep as well.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's a school, it's a program that the Tigers know well.
Was Trent Pierce or Ant Robinson Dennis's first ever commit? I think it was Ant. But I want it was either him or Trent. Those were the first two. Because I remember vividly my reaction when I saw Trent Pierce committed, and then I looked him up and saw 4 stars. I was like, oh my God. I was like hot and bothered. But I can't really remember.
And pulling up the class of 2024 for basketball, looking at these commits.
Yeah. It does tell you.
It is class of 2024. In that year, okay, let's see if it loads.
No, it was 23. 23.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah. Let's see. It was Ant. Okay. Ant by 12 days.
Yeah.
Oh, remember Kurt Lewis?
No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes I do. JUCO. I totally forgot about Kurt Lewis. Wow.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Kind of surprising.
On.
Lumped in here. Best thing that Jack learned this week is looking back at this college football playoff ranking. Tigers, of course, in that 20 to 25 range in the 23 spot. But the teams that got buys, Oregon, Texas, BYU, and Miami are the projected top 4 right now. Behind them is number 9, Notre Dame, at number 8, Tennessee, number 12, Boise State, at number 5, Ohio State, number 11, Ole Miss, at number 6, Penn State, and number 10, Alabama, at number 7, Indiana, if the season ended today.
Yeah, and then Missouri's 23. South Carolina entered the rankings at 21. Missouri is still behind LSU, which kind of sucks, but let's enjoy that number while we have it. A lot was talked about having Georgia left out. I don't think you could have Georgia in at the moment. I mean, if Georgia wins out, they'll probably still make it somehow. Miami falling all the way to 9 is pretty crazy. They have not been good this year, mind you. But, I mean, you're approaching a territory for Miami where if they lose another game, there's a very good chance that they are left out. Like a potential 2-loss team being left out from a Power 4 conference is just always crazy to think about. A&M still hanging around. Indiana, I don't know why everyone is so upset by Indiana only being 5. Like, I know that Penn State has a loss, and Texas, people are talking about how their best win is still Vanderbilt. But sometimes the eye test kicks in, and you just know Texas is better than Indiana. You could talk me into Indiana being over Penn State. I don't really care. It'll be a moot point when Indiana loses this weekend to Ohio State. But yeah, overall, I don't think these rankings were that bad. However you say it, tried and true tradition to yell about these rankings when they come out, no matter how good or bad they are.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty kind of useless until the end of the season as well. With this one, you can maybe feel a little bit more pride just with that number next to your favorite team. But Indiana has a late bye, already at up to 11 games after this weekend, a bye week, and then their final game of the season. But wow, Indiana is, I mean, shocked everyone. Payton, as I plug in Jack's final score here, give him his 27-10 South Carolina. Do you have a joke for us?
I sure do, Kenny. This one comes from our favorite TV series, The Today Show. Kenny, where did people hang out during medieval times?
This is tough. I don't know. At night?
They hang out, what?
At night?
You're really close. At nightclubs.
There we go.
Yep.
Nightclub. That's
there
what
you go. At nightclubs. Good
Yeah.
job, Kenny.
Thank you. Well, that's going to do it for for Friday's edition of the Unwritten Rule. We'll be back on Monday with some recaps, the latest on Mizzou basketball, but also recapping that South Carolina game with anything else in our quick hits. As always, that's Payton Haverman. I'm Kenny Van Dorn, and we'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend.